coach, all of a sudden someone comes to you and says, wants to film you. Like, what goes through your thought? I mean, what's the first thought there?
He called me on the phone, and I was a little skeptical. You know, I don't know how he got my name, but he called me out of the blue, and I remember I was working on a master's in education. I remember I was sitting on my couch, had my computer on my lap, and someone called me and said he wanted to you know, film my team. And I remember the one thing that I thought was this would be great for the kids. And Billy mentions that we need more respect, but in Arizona, you know, the res is the middle of nowhere. And I grew up in Bedford, just up the road here, and it is a different planet out on the res. And I moved there in 1997, and we planned to stay there a couple years, and we fell in love with it, and I lived there for 14 years. And we finally left when my oldest reached high school age, and the wheels just fell apart at the high school and had to leave. But I felt like a documentary would be that, you could tell on the phone, I hadn't met him yet, but I could tell he had compassion. He told me he had spent a few months, I think, on the res in Shanto, just up the road from Tuba City, and he knew what it was like to live there, and I knew that he would bring some compassion to whatever he did, and I had no idea if the thing would ever come together. He came out in the fall of 2008, and this guy was kind of coming and going. He was going to Chin Lee. He'd show up at these meets down in Phoenix, and everyone was always asking me, when's the film going to come out? No idea.
Perennial question.
But man, it was a great thing to be a part of, but I really applaud Brian for the work he did. I don't know how many hundreds of hours he must have edited down to that 1 hour of footage. But we did do one showing in Tuba City, and all the parents and the friends and the generations of runners were there, and I can't tell you how thankful they were to have this piece of work done, and they thanked him over and over.
Yeah, here.
There you are.
Yeah, question for the coach also again. Coach.
Yeah, Coach.
So, yeah, how did you how do you end up in Tuba City? And did it take time for them to accept you, being an outsider? How you gain their trust?
It didn't take long at all to be accepted. We moved. My wife was a physician, so we moved to Tuba City because she wanted to provide healthcare where healthcare is needed, and so she's an OBGYN, and just one story about being accepted. My son went to Montgomery Day School. It's kind of hard to understand why there's Hopi and Navajo there in Tuba City. The original settlers there were Hopi, and the Mormons settled what is now Tuba City in the late 19th century. The Navajo reservation was expanded, and Mormon settlers were kicked out. But the Mormons named it Tuba City because they were mispronouncing the Hopi elder's name, who was Tuvi, and they mispronounced it as Tuba. You'll see the same, for some reason they confuse that B and V a lot. You'll see Old Oribe, which is the longest continuously inhabited village in North America. It's a Hopi village about 20 miles up the road, and you'll see it Oribe. But Mokopi was the farming village for Oribe, and at some point hundreds of years ago it became a permanent settlement. But my oldest son started kindergarten at Montgomery Day School, just a small school there, and I decided to go to my first parent-teacher conference, and I had no idea that anyone knew me, and I was elected president of the PTO. So it didn't take long to be accepted. I didn't realize how well accepted I was. And you know, as I mentioned, moved to Flagstaff last year. My wife still works in Tuba City. And every day she comes home and says, I can't tell you how many people came up and said, how's Perry doing? And I miss them, and apparently they miss me too. So.
Another question? Right over here, behind. Oh, okay, right there.
Just a quick
I was
comment.
wondering if you followed any of the boys
Sorry.
and how our local Harvard student is doing?
So these titles are not totally up to date. So Billy did it his freshman year at Harvard, and now he transferred to Stanford. So he's actually at Stanford now.
So he's doing great.
Yeah, he's doing good. He's doing well. Funny enough, the boy who finishes in 20th place at the state meet, Matthew Murray is his name. He is now at Harvard. So yeah, and unfortunately he couldn't come tonight because he had practice. But yeah, so as far as you saw that Ryan Yazzie is at Central Arizona College. He's finishing up his 3rd year there. Jonathan Yazzie, actually, that title ended up being wrong. He didn't go to Diné College. He actually wound up going also to Central Arizona, and what's that? As well as Brian's sister April, who's Dennis's girlfriend. Yeah. And funny enough, Ryan and Johnny are roommates now at Central Arizona College. So. And not related though. I mean, Yazzie is like the Brown or Smith of the reservation. There's lots of Yazzies. And who I'm missing, Dennis. You know, he's still at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. He's still on a kind of a pre-med track. Saw him last weekend, and he said to me, "Yeah, this semester I'm only doing 4 courses." I said, "What do you mean only?" He's like, "Yeah, freshman year I did 5 and 5." I was like,
5 and 6.
5 and 6? Oh. I was like, "Yeah, I never did more than 4, Dennis." Like, so,
This one gentleman's been waiting to ask a question right here in the front.
sure.
Yes, sir.
Well, I just wanted to comment, one of my favorite parts of the film was that prayer to the mountain. I thought was really, really incredible in the spirit of the whole process. But let me just ask my question. You guys can both respond to that. But Brian, I was just curious how you got involved in this. What was your inspiration? What was your connection to Arizona and all of that?
I wish it was a short answer to this question, but I'll try and give you the short answer. I first, when I went to college, I happened to take a Native American religions class that I was absolutely, really taken with. And the school that I went to used to have January programs, month-long during the winter break. And there was a assistant teaching program that went out onto the reservation. And my teacher said, do it. He said, it's so cold on the reservation that none of the teachers actually sign up for this thing. So there's plenty of spots. So I went the first year, and I was immediately taken. I think the kids really just, I think I kind of connected with the culture. I'm kind of a reserved, person. I'm not necessarily outgoing, just like them. But they had a very dry sense of humor, and they were really funny. And I think for me, that's the one, when I watched the film, with an audience, it really makes me feel good if people laugh, because I think there's a lot of, humor in there. I think people don't realize how funny these people are, because they're so, kind of reserved. Anyway, I found the kids to be really, really funny, but also really talented, really creative, and really resilient. And I think, over the years, as I got more into, I work as an editor, and I think as I got more into documentary filmmaking, I always wanted to, to make a film about the reservation, but, that's just too broad of a subject. You can't just make a film, about the reservation. You have to, figure out how to focus in on something. And I think it really was, there was a New York Times article on native running that I read. And at the time, I was actually looking to do a cross-country documentary. I was actually looking around here, and when I read the article, it all just fell into place. And I was like, this is it. This is exactly the kind of angle and the focus that I need to tell this story. And I called my old friends out on the reservation. They all said, get out here now, and I started researching coaches, and probably a few weeks later, that's when Carl got the call. So.
Thanks for the question. I was able to check that one off. And I'm follow up on that question is that, and you're talking about how you're going to narrow it, it's not going to be a film about the reservation. So when you started, or in the middle, or now at the end, was it to be a film, a social commentary, or was it to be about running, or how did you blend it?
I think it was, I mean, I'm always uncomfortable with, say, going out to make a social commentary film. I think that those kinds of films can border on, propaganda. And at the end of the day, when you watch a documentary and it doesn't really contain the complexity of life that you experience, you don't engage with it, because you realize, okay, this filmmaker is excluding a whole bunch of stuff that does not, move toward the message, let's say, that he wants to deliver. But I do think, in a broader context, I really just wanted people to understand what these kids go through. I knew that I did not want to make a film about tragedy. I mean, I think because that's an easy one to make on the reservation, and it's been made a lot. But ultimately, that's not the way that I experienced these kids. They didn't. They were certainly facing a heck of a lot more than I faced in high school, and a heck of a lot more than anybody off the reservation faces. No question about it. But they didn't define themselves as tragic victims. That's not the way that they saw themselves. And I just wanted to be true to how I felt that they viewed themselves. I did not want to shy away from the difficult things that they were going through, but I didn't want to define them, by their tragedy, or And Sean and I had a lot of discussions early on. We made a lot of editing decisions in that direction. And it's very tempting. Basically I said, I want you to like these guys. I want you to like them for the same reasons that I like them, and then and then we'll learn about their life. And I think, ironically, when you don't set out to make a social commentary, a social justice kind of a film, I think that it ends up being the most powerful social justice that you can make, because you have true compassion for these people and you understand them in their full dimension. And if you can do that, I think that any understanding you can increase between people is going to help. So.